Good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate your time here this afternoon. This is our very first Fairport Forward 2022 presentation. It's sort of like a dress rehearsal. There'll be our first one, and our second one will be better than our first one, and our second one and our third one will be better than our second one. It's just like the classroom lesson. But for those of you who are here, we are streaming live on our YouTube channel, and we do have a handful of staff here. But I do also think that we will be having more presentations, more opportunities for staff and staff only. We have, put some original dates out there, but like I said, there'll be video recordings. We're recording this on YouTube Live, and I know that people will want to have some Q&As, and we're going to keep moving forward with more presentations, more interactions, more opportunities for questions. We anticipate a vote on December 13th, 2022 on the Fairport Forward project, this very project that you are here listening to today. There is a thought exchange out there just for staff. This thought exchange is going to continue to be open and active. Again, we think this is a dynamic process. We're going to learn through our presentations, and this is our first presentation, and we took the thoughts and ideas that were shared in the original thought exchange, which was sent out last week. It helped us prepare accordingly. This QR code is live, and at any point in time, you can zoom in on it, and it should take you to the thought exchange so we could continue to learn and be informed where we are. And I think it's important just to set the stage that there was a whole process in 2018 with the District Advisory Council. We had 110 members of our school community, from parents, students, and staff, here in this very room kicking it off. It felt like it was just yesterday, talking about our hopes and expectations for our schools. Through the District Advisory Council originally that was set forth in 2018, we were able to get thousands of pieces of data with our partners from the University of Rochester. And it's worth mentioning that they were so impressed with the level of information that we received. They do school improvement plans throughout the entire state, and to this date, they say they have not ever received the amount of information and feedback and care and hope for their schools that they have in our Fairport community. That doesn't surprise me. So we feel like we have a good pulse on our community's expectations. And then, as you remember, from March to May of 2019, there were staff and community presentations just like today. And throughout each one of those presentations, we became more informed. We're able to put information into those presentations, into this presentation, because we remember some of the things that were important to the community, but we'll learn our way through this. So we're just replicating the same process, many opportunities to interact for staff and many opportunities to interact for community. You're welcome to be a part of any one of those processes or those information sessions. I think it's very important that we don't forget, on May 28th of 2019, the Board of Education created a resolution to merge Minerva Glen to Fairport High School. You see lots of projects occurring at FHS and throughout the district, but most poignantly at FHS, it's to stage students coming over from Minerva Glen to the high school. And we're doing that simply because it's about opportunities and programs. We want our students to have access to the incredible programming that we have in our Fairport schools, the electives, the clubs, the interactions with staff, and to lessen a transition, right? We know that transitions make a difference, and we know that too many transitions can interfere and interrupt an educational process. So we feel that the less transition, but also, and just as important, the opportunity to take advantage of our programming here at the high school is a tremendous opportunity and advantage, as we have had declining enrollment through the years, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. From September to December of 2019, again, more community information sessions, getting feedback so the community is aware, and so they can come out and be prepared to vote as they did in 2019 with the capital improvement project. And again, we see the benefits of that. You see the cafeteria, you see the science classrooms, you see the security vestibules, you see the throughout the district, there's other great improvement projects. The multi-purpose field behind the high school is another example of the things that we voted on in 2019. In 2019 to 2021, We are in the design and approval stage, and 2021 there was groundbreaking to where we are today. So we've had a process. We've had the community interact. We've had great results. We've been on time delivering what we shared, and we're really proud of the work that's occurring, but we have more work to do. In our community in 2018 agreed with us. Our community had expectations. They continue to have expectations. They didn't want our schools to be serviceable. Those of you who remember this data, we were questioning, and we were really happy that we don't want just average schools. We want excellent schools. We want comfortable, welcoming, flexible learning environments. And our community said it was important to upgrade. And the proof was in the 92% approval of important to upgrade of those who agree with that important priority. Redirect resources. People want Fairport students to go to Fairport schools. They want to interact with Fairport professionals and Fairport educators. People don't want us to redirect resources. They want us to use our own community resources. Reduced buildings was something that people agreed with and strongly agreed with. And in this plan, you'll see how we're going to be looking at our district offices at Balmer Place and the district office on Church Street. And this idea of having pride in your schools, making sure that we're taking care of our curb appeal and our reputation. You go around to other schools, I hear it frequently, our facilities need to shine, there needs to be curb appeal, and our community agreed with us, and we continually hear that. This was the latest thought exchange at a budget vote when we asked people to share their thoughts and feelings and expectations. And this is what they say. This is what they believe. They believe in our schools. They believe that we should invest in our schools. They believe that we should utilize the resources of this community so we can give our students the very best programming. And you feel that last week or 2 weeks ago at the pep rally, right? We have close to 5,000 people coming out to celebrate our community spirit and the hope for our future and the hope for our kids in our schools. We have a proud community. We have a community that has high expectations for our schools. We continually see the support through our budget process, through our last capital project, and that hasn't wavered. This is the Fairport Forward 2020-22 timeline. It's important that you recognize that this is not about any other project at this time. We are talking about what we plan to bring to our community in December of 2022. And Mr. Stevens is going to take some time to talk about that.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Provenzano. So first, kind of looking at the timeline, we'd start off with a referendum vote in December of 22. You can see there, the first piece of that. If the project gets approved, the next step of the process is really to go through a design process, doing our schematic design, the architect going through that, user group meetings. Once that's complete and going through all the spaces for design there'd be a submission to the state education department. At that time, it's reviewed at the state education department. They take a look through the specs, they provide comments back, and so forth. So it takes several months to actually get a project approval beyond that. So that's why you don't see construction really beginning until 2024. So that'd be when we anticipate starting construction, be a second year construction in 2025 with the anticipated end construction just before the 26-27 school year, in which then we would be able to merge the ninth graders into Fairport High School. After that, once we're able to vacate Minerva land, we then can begin to look at our admin offices consolidation. So here, as we go through the project and you see the different scope items, you'll see that there will be some construction pieces at Martha Brown, and then in order to shift Balmer Place staff out of Balmer Place into Martha Brown, as well as some existing space at Minerva DeLand. So that's the timeline for the 2022 capital improvement project. Important to note, a lot of this, develops when we do project planning and looking at our maximum cost allowance. Three fancy words for really what the state provides school districts for building aid, and that aid is on a 5-year rolling clock. We have to look at available dollars and how we phase projects as a whole. So we always have that in mind when we look at the different scope items for any capital improvement project, as well as our building aid rates and trying to manage the taxpayer impact at the end of the day. So we'll see some of those pieces a little bit later on in the presentation.
So you'll see we have our friends from Labello, our architects, and our construction managers from Campus Construction here. They'll chime in if we need some support. But I think one thing that they could vouch for, in Fairport, we get people involved. We get people involved so they have an understanding of what the space is going to look like. If there's a space that is going to impact your discipline, your athletic fields, we get you involved early and often, and then throughout the process, right? And I'm proud of that because we feel that you need to be well represented. We want to make sure that we're creating an environment that you could feel comfortable with. Our cafeteria right now, so many people have their hands in that, from students to staff to cafeteria workers to the private work, not the private, but the breakout rooms. That was all driven by a collaborative process. This is just the first of many, but if there is a piece on this timeline or this project, be assured that you will have an opportunity to have a voice in it, and we'll give you an opportunity to come to the table. We're early in the process, especially if and when and hopefully we do have an approved project in December, that will ramp up even more. But I also want to mention the fact, and just put it out there, like Minerva DeLand is the district's. We use Minerva DeLand. If you go to Minerva DeLand at any point in time, whether it's in the evening or on the weekend, it's still a facility in use. Athletic teams use it. The gymnasium, the performing arts use Minerva DeLand. Our middle schools use Minerva DeLand for concerts. So we see that as a vital resource to continue to provide programming, to use it for offices, as Mr. Stevens mentioned, for the district as we consolidate offices. Fairport for 2022 has three main goals. It's about bringing the ninth graders here to Fairport High School. It's about consolidating district buildings. When we're talking about consolidating district buildings, it's the Bomber Place, it's eventually the district office moves. It's using space at Martha Brown and Minerva DeLand to provide those important services. And we forget the fact that we're a real live organization. We have over 1,000 employees that need a comfortable, safe working environment. And we feel like we have the resources to do that with our facilities while consolidating and protecting our investment. That was the one thing that we always learned through the District Advisory Council. People said, why haven't we done upgrades to our schools? And people said in the thought exchange, our elementary schools are tired. There's tired buildings throughout our district. And we're glad that people still recognize that. And we'll talk about how we're going to address our elementary buildings later on in this presentation too. But there's a community expectation, just like at your house. There's maintenance, there's repairs. So there's just not always these big renovation projects. But we hope to get on a cycle, make it predictable, and less intrusive on our taxpayers.
So the next few slides, we're going to look at the concepts here at Fairport High School. Here you see kind of a site plan overall. Over on the far right-hand side, you can see the new multi-purpose synthetic turf field that has been installed over the past couple of years. And then our stadium turf, which was also replaced in the last capital project. In this project, the 2022 project, we have tennis courts being relocated primarily due to parking. So, key piece in our long-range plan, not only with our facilities for PE, phys ed, and athletics, is also to accommodate the staff needs for parking that we would have at Fairport High School. So, in order to have some space, we have relocating the tennis courts, which has been part of the master plan overall. And then also you see the track with the grass field inside being shifted over to be more adjacent and near the stadium field. So, and then expanding the track to an 8-lane track to be larger than we currently have. And same as a note with the tennis courts. Right now we have 5 tennis courts. It's expanding to 7 tennis courts. These two pieces allow us to host more events as a district. and really provide additional opportunities for our students. In the back, in the yellowish color, you can see there's an addition. That is a STEAM addition, and that is 5 classrooms to be added for our science, tech, engineering, arts, and math pieces. So, some bigger tech spaces overall in the back of this building. We've been working with the high school administration and staff in terms of kind of some initial thoughts on those areas as a whole. So looking to relocate that. That also helps us accommodate the additional students that we'd be shifting over from Minerva Land to Fairport High School in this move.
So if you are here at FHS, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you go to our current technology spaces, they're tired. They were built in 1970. They serve their purpose. As far as flexible, inviting spaces, which we know make a difference to the quality of a learning environment, that's not the case here. But however, our technology and our elective programming has increased significantly through the years. Informational technology, computer game design, web design, woodworking, automotive classes, small gas engines. We need spaces that allow multidisciplinary users utilize these areas. Art, we have a NASA Hunch program. Right now they're working in multiple different spaces. Our robotics team can't even get into the high school to practice. We're hoping that we can create a STEAM edition right here that will enable our students and our staff to interact with each other, to learn in a 21st century environment, an environment that's flexible, that's responsive, that's welcoming, so our students can collaborate and problem solve. Our community expects that. Our students would benefit and appreciate it as well. And I think our staff would thrive in those types of environments.
So if you just jump back, just before jumping to the next slide, just a couple of notes. In order to try to maximize dollars on the project, you can see, the striping where the tennis courts are. We're really going to be utilizing the current tennis courts to park vehicles. So, trying to maximize dollars to do some other site work on the property, to try to use that as we look at long-term planning overall in terms of what our long-term plans for parking look like. But essentially we'd be going right over the current tennis court and utilizing those for parking in the interim as we plan for future projects.
How many parking spots in this area that we're looking for? Approximately?
Say a little over 100, right?
75, 80, right? And then we have these extra spaces right here, right? So, the question is, well, how are we going to accommodate more staff vehicles? And I think there's our answer right now. And we will continue to refine this as we move along.
So this next slide takes a look at the floor plans at the high school. This is the first floor. The areas shaded in blue are the areas of construction, and again, the red portion would be those 5 classrooms in the STEAM edition. In blue, the library is a key piece of with a good portion of work taking place, creating some classrooms within the library, trying to maximize the different spaces, doing some reconstructing the library. You see some music suite, as well as art room reconstruction, some of the additional spaces that we've seen over the years needing some improvements within the high school, and also helping us, coupled with the work we just did in that we're doing and have done in the 2019 capital project with the science classrooms, trying to continue to maximize the spaces and upgrade and renovate those spaces. And then you see the classroom reconstruction in the tech space we'd be vacating near the athletic director office in the back of the building, utilizing that for additional health classrooms. So again, taking all the different spaces and looking at the students coming over and trying to maximize the space we have, create some additional classrooms for the move as a whole. And here's just some spaces in the upstairs that coincide with the transition as well. And this is just taking some existing spaces and reconstructing into some workrooms.
At any point in time, if you have questions, don't hesitate to jump right in. And I should have said that in the beginning. Again, you do have the thought exchange, which we'll be showing the link in a little bit. But here are some very important numbers that I think many of our community members are interested in learning about.
Yep. So this takes all of that work at the high school. So again, the major theme, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned before, for the work is bringing ninth grade over from Minerva DeLand to Fairport High School. And here you see really the cost of that. That's the bulk of this project as it relates to construction dollars, $35.3 million. You see the addition, renovation, and site work taking place at the building. And you'll see when we get to a total budget, there are incidentals such as our design, architectural, construction management fees, legal, insurance, and so forth that have to be covered in a capital project, as well as contingency, because projects don't actually don't get bid out for a couple of years beyond approval. So we have to build in those contingencies for escalation of costs, as well as any unknowns that we may encounter during a capital project. And there are, you see that the second asterisk at the bottom. This is not all of the work that we have identified on our building condition survey. The building condition survey is a 5-year required process that schools need to go through per New York State, that the architects come in and they review our facilities. They look at useful life. They look at areas that may be damaged, need replacement, and identify all of those different pieces. So there is still more work. It's just we're prioritizing for this particular capital project and identifying some of that building condition survey work that can take place and coincides with some of the rooms and areas we're doing construction in to try to bring those up to speed.
So how many FHS former grads are in this room, right, and out there? You might say to yourself, well, geez, we were here when there were 2,000 plus students, and that was true. The next portion of this speaks to, why do we need this? Again, yes, go for it. Donna.
I didn't see any notation around the pool area. Are there any renovations scheduled around the pool?
I love that question. And I think as we move through this project, you'll see where that's coming in another phase. It goes back to there's community expectations. That pool is the same pool. We're doing lots of repair to that pool, but we have to do it in a thoughtful, phased-in way so we don't go back and redo things after we get done with brand new construction. So our construction managers and our architects work very closely to figure out where that goes and where the best phase is, right? Yes, Lynn.
On one of the slides before the map, can you go back? Yeah. So what did you say the blue are where the technology rooms are?
The health, the PE.
Health classrooms.
So there's going to be 2 health classrooms. In order for us to bring students over, we need to use that space for 2 health classrooms. Again, that's right next to the athletic office, because that's your concern, which we talked about. And I think as we move through this, we talked about what can we do in your office, in that office, the athletic director's office. What are the long-term plans for the athletic office? And we will see as we move through phase 3 where the new office is projected to be. It's a phase 3 design, but what can we do in phase 2? That is the question.
Okay, because just like the original plan, we were on it, and then when we saw these, I thought, what happened?
So go for it.
Yeah, so it really comes down to, through any project, looking at different concepts that we have as a district and prioritizing work on our building condition survey, work that can take place with bringing students over, and comes down to allocation of dollars within any capital project, and prioritizing those to maximize aid, as well as construction across the district. So sometimes changes have to be made in the conceptual phase of design work before getting to an approval.
Another way to look at it, when we talk about phase 3 at another point in time, you'll see that the possibility and the prospects of a aquatic center, right? And that's in this area right here, okay? And if we construct in this area now, we'll have to go back and construct again. So that's why the pool and the remainder of this area that you're concerned with, rightfully so, needs to be dealt with and managed in phase 3 completely, right? So I know that's, geez, I wish we had it. But as we move closer to our dates, things get refined. When we talk about scope and how much we can get aid on, we have to start prioritizing. And the pool is a major reconstruction, which again is a community expectation. At this time, though, do it in the most effective, efficient manner, it needs to go in phase 3. I don't know if I'm doing its justice, campus, Mark or Brian?
Pretty much hit that. It's just maximizing the space and the dollars you'll spend for construction.
And being able to go back and have it redone after it's renovated. You don't want to go back and do it twice. And we'll continue to talk more about what we could do in this project to support some of your valid concerns. Because you are tight on space down there. Yep.
Kevin.
Yep, Kevin.
So you mentioned that, and I liked hearing that we would have kind of some input to all these new spaces that are being built. The one place that I feel like he hasn't had ample teacher input is the new teacher workrooms. And all I've been told is that the workrooms are essentially, as they exist now, are going away to make room for the new classes. And if you look at these two drawings, the new faculty cafeteria, I think, is supposed to be a teacher workroom also. So we've got, that's finished right now, and we have an idea of what that looks like. And there's a lot of us who are concerned that that space down there with 40 smaller desks isn't really going to be conducive to what we need. And especially with the second floor, I don't necessarily see any ample space for teacher workrooms on the second floor. I see science workroom was mentioned a little bit, and you have that new one now, tiny. Our current workroom is that blue spot that says office. I'm not really sure what office that's earmarked to be, but I just have a lot of concerns about where our stuff is.
So, good point. And remember how I said it's early in the process. And I think you would ask a science teacher that, what the shelves look like, what your desks look like, storage. There's decisions you'll have to make because there's space that needs to be divided up so we can have classes and utilization. But by all means, if there will be a process. I know if Bob was here, he would say it's about coming down to making choices. So if I'm just making a number, 18 rooms, and you reduce it down to 17 to have a workroom, sort of like what you have now, that needs to be the conversation, right? And then it gets into, okay, well, what does that mean for room utilization? So that means, you might be sharing with one of your colleagues an extra period or two because, we're taking a workroom, we're taking a classroom and making a workroom. Troy?
So right now, you have about, throughout the building, prior to all the work that's taking place in the 2019 CMP, you had about 11,000 square feet of chopped up space all over this building used as workrooms. And we are consolidating those spaces, and we're going to be on par, if not above that number, in the future to newer, more modernized rooms, of course, but we also have to regain space that used to be classrooms that have over the years turned into workrooms, and because we got to bring kids back in, turn those spaces back into classrooms. That's the juggling act that we kind of have to go through.
So,
Just making everything work.
On the second floor, it seems really,
Yep.
we can't be lugging our stuff up and down, so that's our big concern.
yeah.
So square footage now, usability of space and then being able to do the work in that space. It's not workable. We don't feel like we're being heard. It is not workable. We're talking about 170 staff members potentially plus paraprofessionals and aides, because I'm assuming that everyone's staying 9 through 12. We need everyone to do the job. So 170 staff members, potentially 60 staff members who are free in prep period at any given time, trying to make their phone calls, conference with other teachers, do programming, grading. What is the workable, usable space for that?
We think that's important feedback, and we're open to it, and we know that that's a concern and an interest. So I think, again, where we are in this process with room utilization, I think it's just a matter of what people are willing to give up in order to get that workspace. And then are we able to provide the programming that we need to make that happen? We're looking at a whole new different library configuration, right? And that library configuration, there's going to be an opportunity, again, to have more workspace, whether it's student-teacher combo, because I know that was an interest because teachers wanted to work with students. So you have an area in the front for students, but an area for professional staff. So there's things that we're open to and we're ready to engage in as we move through the process. I think, again, if Bob was here, he would emphasize the importance of, yeah, let's, figure out how to come together and get the project approved and then go on to that next phase, because that's a interest that's loud and clear, and it has been.
If you're putting more classrooms in the library area, is the library space just gonna be smaller than in that main room?
To be more functional. I don't know if we want to speak to the library and make, again, the librarians would be a part of that whole process as well. Troy, did you want to speak to the design of that?
So the library as it's used now, it's very spread out. We will be taking the front of it that's underutilized currently to create the classrooms. So yes, it is being taken out of the square footage of the library. But there's also space there now that's used, that's chopped up in the back, that's not well utilized or able to be utilized. We will be
rendering of it?
taking it in as a part of that library space as well.
So my concern is, in this district, there's a very limited number of spaces to have large groups meeting, like for professional development and whatnot. And it seems like that's going to shrink that room down. We'd like to have space for the teachers to be able to move on and do their work, and to still have spacing due to COVID and whatnot. So that's going to only reduce the size of that space then, by
So-
putting those classrooms in there.
So outside of the library space, we've created within the cafeteria a large open area that can be divided into two spaces that can be used for large group instruction. There are two adjoining spaces on either side flanking there that can house about 50 people each room. So if there is a need for another space other than what's been provided, we can certainly look at and figure out how that can be accomplished if it's in a well-defined manner as to how it will be used.
Living in the space too, again, I know you've been in the cafeteria, there's two incredible large group instruction areas. There's a room that's off to the, in the back that's, private, but yet being able to get, close to 50 students in there or staff. So I think we're hearing you loud and clear that flexible spaces are important, teacher workrooms are important. Yeah, that's part of the process. That's why we're doing these.
What is the reason that this campus, this is my 22nd year here at FHS, why do we only have one entrance and exit? Is it a zoning issue?
You're talking about the road, at the road, yeah,
Topography issue.
yeah.
There's
It,
a bill that's to the west. And sight, correct. That way, sight lines and everything kind of prohibits you from being able to cut out.
it's not something we can just do ourselves, though, right? There's,
Speed raises, right, traffic studies. We could want it, we would pay a boatload for it because it's a five, DOT can say, you're not doing it. One reason, some reasons. One being money should be five, three. Just because we want it, we need the DOT, we set lines and traffic patterns.
thank you. I appreciate the questions. They're noted. We are taking notes on these questions too. Again, here's some pictures of what our current library storage looks like. Again, the space that we currently have in the library is underutilized, and there's lots of inefficiencies with it. Collaborating just in the beginning with our library staff. We haven't yet brought over the Minerva Deland team, but they will be part of the process as well. You can see that there's spaces here that need to be rethought, reimagined. Our music rooms, which are part of this proposal, engaging with our music staff on how do we create a choir room or an ensemble area. We've had students provide input this last week. They're excited about the prospects of creating a space that is conducive to the performing arts. Again, these are spaces that need work, that have lots of access of our students and our staff, and creating an environment would be an exciting thing and a welcome thing. examples of our auto shop. Here's our tech hallway. Again, all part of the renovation plan in this current phasing. Here's a makerspace. If you go to the current makerspace that's here pictured on the left, that's about 6 kids, 5 kids. We think we could do better. We think that we could provide a space that is accessible and flexible, that accommodates a true makerspace, that allows us to have programming. If it's not, the NASA Hunch program, it's, a web design class or a computer game or a production and film class. Again, having facilities to be able to house, multiple different disciplines. Again, here's the FHS ceramics room. This is where we provide incredible programming, connections with kids, but in an area that's just not too inviting. And on the right, as we talk about what we're going to be doing at Jefferson Avenue, there's a cafeteria here, again, off our building condition survey, prioritizing that needs a lot of work, so our students can have a facility at that level.
So jumping into the cost of the other buildings, so not work not just at the high school, but some other smaller dollar work taking place at our other 6 buildings. Minerva Deland is not included for construction in this project. Brooks Hill, you can see at each building, you see toilet room reconstruction. That has been identified continuously on our building condition survey. Outdated bathrooms, really in need of reconstruction. So we've allocated about 750 square feet of reconstruction for toilet rooms across the buildings. Brooks Hill, you can see there, primarily HVAC work, mechanical, direct digital control replacement. Those are for our efficiencies, for our controls, for our systems, cafeteria, HVAC replacement, air handling units, unit heaters. These are really all pieces that have exceeded useful life and needed replacement within Brooks Hill. Dudley Northside, you see there the square footage for toilet rooms reconstruction. And then at Jefferson Ave, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned before, one of the big pieces there is the kitchen cafeteria, full reconstruction with the kitchen equipment. So looking at our kitchen cafeterias, identifying long-term work that's taken place in other buildings, aidable dollars, all of those pieces go together in identifying which kitchen cafeteria to look at for reconstruction, as well as some of the different needs in that area that could use some improvements in terms of some additional code improvements and things in that kitchen that may not be needs in other kitchens. So that's kind of the purpose and reason for selecting Jefferson Ave as the next kitchen cafeteria. Again, we did the one here at the high school. So there is a process. There's a procedure we go through when we look at these spaces to identify what would make the most sense in the next phase of the project. And ultimately, long term, we'd hope to do them all. The plan would be, as we continue to face construction work in the future, to look at each one of our kitchen cafeterias in our buildings and do reconstruction.
And I think that it was really telling, and I was really kind of optimistic when I saw, the thoughts about why is this all focused on the high school, right? Our elementary schools need a lot of work, and why are you only putting $300,000 in, JP when you know that the tech rooms are tired? We know that. Right? And it goes down to the priorities at this point in time. It's about the merger. It's about getting the school ready to accept our 9th graders from Minerva Deland and our staff from Minerva Deland to the high school. We know and we're excited about the future prospects, which you'll see of more work, more phased-in work, so it can be done in a fiscally responsible way. But we also know that there's about $200 million, maybe plus, dollars worth of work that needs to occur. Can't get it all done at once. So you need to be thoughtful on how to do this.
And again, you see the themes at the top, really our infrastructure, property consolidation, building code improvements, accessible toilet rooms, energy efficiency, digital controls. All of those pieces are tied in the work that you see taking place at those buildings. At our middle schools, you'll see some similarities here as well. Again, Joanna Perrin, just the toilet room reconstruction. And then at Martha Brown, here you see some reconstruction of some spaces in order to create space to move staff into, as well as more ventilation upgrades for air handling units, direct digital controls for our energy efficiencies, as well as some other ductwork and ventilation upgrades in spaces that we will be in. So it helps to, kind of arrange that construction around the different spaces where we see work taking place, to be up in the ceilings when you're doing construction in other areas.
It also helps us stage for the sale of Balmer Place, so those professionals can go to Martha Brown and work in an environment with office space in a portion that's unused currently at Martha Brown. So dollars will be associated with ventilation and quality air management.
So altogether, again, we take the construction dollars from each building, which you see up next to the selected buildings, and then we have to apply the construction contingency budgets as well as incidental budgets to the capital work for a total project referendum about $62.25 million. And here's kind of here's the breakdown in terms of what that looks like. Again, as we look through this, we look at available aided dollars, we look at aidable work taking place. Our building aid ratio for Fairport is about 80%. However, in any capital project, there will be work that is not aided at that aid rate, meaning it's not aided at all. So you can see in the assumptions, there's a number below that says 70% bond percentage, which means 70% of the work in this project is aided at the 80%. So we have to come up with some coverage of that local share. That's not just the 20%, that's the aid ratio, but also that portion that's not aided. So you see here at the top that we're applying $19.2 million of capital reserve usage, and that's been planned over the years as we continue to utilize fund balance monies and allocate that to capital reserve to help lessen the impact of capital projects as a whole. So you see pending audit financials completion, we're near the end of that for the year end of 21-22. So we'll have the final numbers just to be able to confirm that. But right now we have initial projections of $19.2 million being available to offset this project and feel comfortable with that. So then it rolls through, what do we borrow as a district? We borrow the 62.25 less the 19.2 for a principal payment. Interest gets applied. We have a debt service. We borrow for reconstruction projects over 15 years because that's how long the state takes to aid those projects. They will aid us for 15 years. So you receive an aid payment each year after you complete the work and file final cost reporting of the cost for the project. So that $39.8 million is spread out over 15 years. And then that means our annual cost is a little over $1 million a year on the local share side. It's about a $59 impact for a $200,000 home, or about 1.26% on the current tax levy that's in place. This debt, important to note, this actually doesn't hit for a few years out when you finally go to long-term debt and start doing the short-term borrowings to fund the work after project approval at the state and bidding. So this doesn't actually hit the tax roll until at least a year or two beyond the vote itself. So a couple other assumptions you'll see through there, and these are rules at the state level in terms of how pieces get aided. So we're assuming some aid coming over from Minerva to Land students and building aid units. Those are all functions of the transition in the aid process. To be able to receive, we're assuming we're going to get 50% of the aid units that we have at Minerva to Land over to Fairport High School. Only 3 of the 5 tech classrooms are anticipated to be aided. That's, again, state standard in terms of the process. And again, a December of 22 referendum. So that's the summary of the costs of the project in terms of how that flows and works for community, taxpayers, our budgets over time.
Again, here's information you can continue to share with us. There's a thought exchange. Please feel free to use this link. We do have some questions that came up that we tried and will continue to try to answer as we move through this process. But we know that the 9th grade year is incredibly important. Transitions are important throughout the next several years. As we prepare for 2026, we'll be working on a transition plan that gives 9th graders a welcoming environment with the right types of support. Again, having access to staff in a consistent place over 4 years is a plus. having access to resources to support them in their transition in one consolidated area is a plus. We will have a formal rollout as we get closer to 2026. AC, we know air conditioning is a priority throughout the district. We continually hear that. As you will see and will continue to see as we've gone through certain projects, we've been able to get air conditioning in large group spaces. For example, as we move through the current project, science classrooms, that area there will have air conditioning. The library spaces will have air conditioning, continued air conditioning, more efficient air conditioning. The gymnasium and the cafeteria will also be air conditioned as well. So we know it's a priority, but we also know that we need to be thoughtful about it because if you look at maximizing dollars and maximizing opportunities for students and the amount of days that you actually use air in Rochester, like today's, and it's just at the end of September, right? And last summer was another year where there wasn't a lot of air used. So we know it's important though, and when we do need it, we need it. But we're trying to be thoughtful about it. And when we can't get it in, how can we prepare to get it in for the future is the big question.
Yeah, and just to add, in terms of the new spaces, we look at building that into the project, but the existing spaces we have for reconstructing in order to make the budget, in order to balance the budget as a whole in terms of utilizing capital reserve dollars, air conditioning is not built into this particular budget for the existing spaces we're renovating. However, similar to the 2019 capital project, when we went through the bid process, we received favorable bids. And then we were able to actually add an alternate through the bid process to be able to do the science classroom. So we'd be doing, looking at these projects similarly as we continue through the bid process for any of these capital projects, that if it's not built in, are there ways that we can try to get at some of the spaces that we are renovating in order to add that to some of those existing spaces. So, always hoping for the favorable bid process to help out with that overall, like Mr. Provenzano mentioned, about priorities as we go through the budget process for the capital project as a whole, but still is in our mind and important to us as well as we look through the future.
How are we going to fit 4 grades and teachers in FHS when there's already space? And what about enrollment will increase? We've studied enrollment every year that I've been superintendent for the past 4 or 5 years. Our trends continue to be consistent. Now you can't project, with certainty and guarantee 10 years out, but we have inclination and belief that numbers will remain where they are, anywhere between the 400 and 450 per graduating class. Our numbers are holding true. Our enrollment projections are consistent with that. And you see how we want to use space, definitely using it differently, using classroom space, upgrading classroom space, making decisions about how many different classrooms, we'll be sharing. Those things need to continually be developed as we move through the process. Again, that's why we're here, to continue to get feedback. But we feel that with the model that we shared, decisions we have to make and the priorities that we need to make, it's doable, especially with our enrollment stabilizing. What happens when we consolidate buildings? How will we be fiscally responsible with the space we have and also let go of space that we no longer need? There is a plan right now and a thought to sell Balmer Place and take Balmer Place professionals and move them to Minerva Land. At the end of this project, we hope that we'll be able to transition. We expect to be able to transition to that. And then looking at district office and doing the same thing with district office as we move through our phasing and timeline. So we will be consolidating spaces, still maximizing Minerva Land, because again, it's a viable facility. Our community uses it. Our district can use it. Think about registration. Think about special education in a centralized place rather than hidden somewhere where it's really hard to find. So there's really real opportunities for consolidation. When will we continue to get at all the others? Other buildings, again, we were pleased to see that there's interest in continuing to upgrade our elementary schools. You could see through this, the board has made this a priority. You'll see that since 2015, since I was fortunate enough to be superintendent, these are the different things that we have done to all of our elementary schools. And that's not enough, right? They're still needing lots of work. And we're going to get at those through a phased-in, fiscally responsible way, as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, so just a kind of a brief summary of different funding sources that we've seen over the years. We had a project in 2015 that was $29.2 million. A good portion of that was roof replacement across the district, protecting our investment in our buildings. Also had some masonry repair, electric, some distribution panel upgrades, parking lot, sidewalk reconstruction. You can see at Brooks Hill. Also, we've done some work through our own facilities budget in the general fund. We do have some dollars we allocate to try to take care of some smaller things over the years. Again, a lot of that budget also goes to sealing our parking lots and taking care of any of the repair work that comes up annually. We have in the, still sticking on Brooks Hill, the 2019 capital project and our Smart Schools project, so 2 separate projects there. We had our secure entries, secure vestibules, work taking place in our buildings across the district for that, and some main office reconstruction in the front of the offices, as well as our access control. So we have door strikes going on for classrooms throughout the entire district, and starting in our elementaries is the first phase of that project. So you see some security upgrades and advances here in our district across all of our buildings. You'll see that common theme throughout each one of the elementary buildings. And then each year, school districts are allowed to do a capital outlay project up to $100,000. So it gives us the opportunity to do about $90,000 in construction when we have design fees and construction management work that takes place. We put air conditioning in Brooks Hill Library a couple of years ago. So that's, again, another area that we've addressed air conditioning. We've done it at the Martha Brown Library through the same avenue and project. So still trying to put AC in spaces. Also did it at the high school guidance suite back about 5-6 years ago as well. So those are some of the pieces there. Of course, the middle school, high school, not on this chart, but just some other areas we've utilized those funds to do that work.
Highly intentional. The board has instructed me very clearly, we need a facilities plan. And I think that speaks to the level of urgency, and I'm excited that we have a plan, and people have expectations. So when I see people saying, hey, what about the elementary, that just tells me that I need to do a better job communicating, what our plan is, how we're going to continue to have plans moving forward in the future. But again, it all starts with the board's expectations of making sure that we do have a facilities plan, and here is a projection.
Sorry, I'm going to head back and hit a couple more items here real quick. A couple of big pieces that we did do as well include, take a look at Jefferson Ave, new bus loop in this 2019 capital project. So you see a major site work renovation over there. We moved the playground. We put a new surface.
Backboards. If I had glass backboards in elementary school, I would have been.
Yeah, put a new surface on the playground instead of mulch. So that's our first playground. We put that in. Installed new playgrounds at each one of our elementary buildings has new playgrounds, but during the project in 2015, we had Northside Dudley and Jefferson Ave all received brand new playgrounds. Northside Dudley had new side parking lots put in for our student drop off as it relates to that. We had parking issues. We had Hamilton Road, a lot of parking taking place on there, and High Street Extension. So a lot of upgrades site work wise that took place over at Northside Dudley as well. And then you can see the exterior door replacement to take place at Dudley. We're doing some terrazzo flooring in the front of Northside as well to replace some of the older flooring over there. So those are a couple of the highlights of the work that's taken place at our elementary buildings over time.
I apologize, Mr. Stevens. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I
Thanks.
appreciate it. That's definitely worth acknowledging, but also the expectation that as we move along in other future projects, this is not this project. This shows that we have a plan, that we want to continue to invest in our facilities. We want to meet the district needs. And here is another timeline for the future. And you'll see at the end, beginning with the end in mind, in 2930, you'll see in that blue potential project, the scope would be elementary school improvements, district office to maneuver the land. There's the pool that was asked earlier, the building condition survey work at all the buildings. So there's work to be done, and there's a plan that we're going to stick to make sure that we're meeting our community's expectations, that the Board of Education continues to prioritize facilities planning in the future. And again, this all takes time. This does this not happen overnight. That's one of my big takeaways as superintendent. I wish I had a magic wand, but this is, what is it, 2022, 7, 8 years into the future. But it's an ongoing conversation, and our community should have that type of clarity, because this will provide predictability as debt falls off and we take on new debt, that it's not done in such a polarizing, striking fashion.
And just to, kind of highlight the slide a little bit more, as we look at planning future projects, you can see here, in the lower left-hand corner, multiple project submissions to the state ed to take into account the building aid. So that's really try to align when we have available building aid dollars falling off, coming back on, available to us. So you see a couple different submissions that would need to take place. Very similar to the project that we just did for the 2019 capital project. We did some design work right up front for the high school work so that we could get that work taking place sooner in order to have those dollars free up sooner for a future project. So that's kind of the strategies that we take in project planning overall. So you'd see, kind of a multifaceted submission phase, bidding phase that would take place through the project, similar to the project we just went through.
Again, here's a place where you can continue to share your thoughts. We hope that we continue to hear from those who are in this audience and those who are who may be on YouTube live, and we'll continue to update our question and answers as we move along. There'll be more opportunities for staff and community members. Here are the dates. We'll continue to make these dates available. So more questions, more information can be shared, and we can continually try to inform our community of our next steps with Fairport Forward. Again, the anticipated vote is December 13th, 2022. If there's any more questions, we'll stick around for a little bit, but otherwise, thank you. Yes, Marty.
Real quick, I just want to make sure that I understand it correctly. The 2022 incorporates Martha Brown having some administrative costs and work done, correct? But then the 2025, to get ready to move the district office over, is not part of this, which I get. When will we see the Martha Brown projected building plans, or what's going to happen, and how is that going to funnel down? When does that happen? Is that part of 2022's? Because I've seen all those pictures of Minerva or in the high school, but I've not seen one thing mentioned that, is it part of 2022? If it is part of 2022, how come we don't see the projected of what's going to be the scope?
So we just shared the scope over here, and we will continue to share and make sure that we clearly communicate what's happening in each building. With conceptual ideas, I think that's what you're asking for, so people could see and understand. But,
Sure.
I understand it at the levels because I see a picture.
sure, no, it makes sense. I appreciate that.
And
Good
so, and
feedback.
sometimes when you talk about toilet rooms, for example, those necessarily haven't been selected yet. So we work with building administrators on that. So you may not see that necessarily singled out on a floor plan that it's going to be these ones, because we're correct. So just, working through the proper spaces.
So we also know that, again, I think that's a great point. We talk about where's the professionals at Balmer Place, where are they going to go, whether it's at Minerva DeLand or whether it's at Martha Brown. You're saying, what's the visual on that? What's the perspective so you can gauge it?
For very, very
Yes,
personal reasons.
Sure.
Of course, everybody's here for their personal reasons. I currently work for two people, neither of which are in the same building. If this is projected the way that I think it's projected, and that doesn't mean that I'm correct, that will further fracture for other people, and I don't understand if you guys could help me, maybe not today, I get that, I'm sorry for people's time, but if you could maybe help me understand, why would you fracture and take Balmer Place, for instance, and potentially move them into two different locations when the push was to get them all to this location together?
so it's a process, right? And having people a part of the process, taking a look at our staff and how we're using staff. How do we maximize staff, special ed, making sure that all the services and responsibility and the people that are responsible for special ed are in one certain area. And then if there is, for some reason, a split, how do we manage and use our staff to allocate, reallocate, manage those transitions? Well taken. Yep.
If I could, what I understand your question to be, Marty, is, you know, right, you don't see in pictures.
Right.
Largely, we're not at that point in the process. What you're asking about is, like, how's that gonna shake out? We're gonna put people, we haven't designed it yet, because we don't have an approved project, and architects don't work for free. So that's right, so that design work, that's why it was, it's conceptual budget, conceptual plans, conceptual. It's not gonna be a secret. I mean, Donald left. So, when we talk about, we're gonna be engaging with, what does your desk look like? That's where, you know, after the concept is done and after the vote is approved, all these things, you will definitely see that. We were measuring microscopes to make sure that the cabinet sizes were correct in the science groups. You'll get there. The reason you don't see it is because it's still conceptual.
But hearing your question validates the importance of making sure we're connecting with the right people. And then if you are affected by a change, you'll be a part of the conversation. And it's just like we said about the workrooms, about if there's going to be, you know, a conversation with math department in this case, you know, how do you maximize your space so you know you can get what you want and get what you're able to get what you need in order to be the best professionals, but also making sure that we can still run the program. So we got to continually, you know, weigh those pros and cons up and come up what's best. Again, you'll see here number of presentations in the future. We'll add that and we'll continue to, you know, refine our presentation too.
Not to keep bringing up everybody's different concerns, is there someone that we can talk to outside of, like, these meetings?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we see each other all the time and, you know, we're accessible. I know that athletic director, you know, Killian is available too. If we need to set up a time user group meeting, by all means, we'd be happy to do that.
Like, specifically, who can we talk to?
There's the capital project website, which is off of the Fairport website, and there's an email us button, and I'll see it, Brett will see it, and then we can get you to who exactly.
But more simply, but thank you. I think that's very useful. But I would also say that connect with Fritz and then Fritz will circle back with us and we'll make sure that we do a walkthrough with you. So it's as simple as that. I mean, it shouldn't be as, you know, it's not complicated to get in touch with us. So thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.